Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Our guest today, Kristian Pitzner. Kristian, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming on. And can you first of all tell us where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with LastObject?
Yeah, sure. I'm calling in from Copenhagen, Denmark, which is in Scandinavia. And LastObject, what do we do? We create reusable and refillable alternatives that help people basically reduce waste from their daily lives. So one of the things we really dislike is single-use products. So we try and create products that you can use over and over again, and that way sort of feel a little bit better about what you're doing in your day-to-day life.
No, that's amazing. And can you tell me a little bit more about your background? I mean, leading up to wanting to, get involved in this space, and what was kind of a problem you saw out there in the market that you were looking to solve or maybe do a little bit differently with this brand?
Basically, the brand was founded by a couple of my friends who are designers. And back in 2019, well, actually, the first thoughts we had about this brand was in 18. And we were looking at the legislation that was coming in Europe that banned a number of single-use products. One of them was basically cotton swabs, because they have a tendency of showing up in our oceans and on our beaches all over the world. And it was one of the sort of top 10 things that the European Union decided to ban, because it's just in massive quantities. It's a small thing, but it's just really everywhere when you start looking at the data. And from a design point of view, it's an interesting challenge. How do you kind of create a reusable alternative to a single-use cotton swab that many people will use to either sort of clean their ears or adjust makeup, right? That became basically the first product, and we did a Kickstarter on it back in 2019, and that went really, really well. We sold almost $1 million worth of reusable swabs on that campaign, and that basically became the start of the business. Yeah.
And then I see on the website you're obviously doing a little bit more now, insofar as it's I can see some like body washes and soaps and things on there. What was kind of I suppose, like after you did the initial product, what was kind of the R&D and like product development process for you going to like having these other SKUs like you have on the website now?
Basically, if we sort of look at the first part of the journey, we really try to stay in our lane when it comes to creating more reusable products. We looked at, other products that are just produced in massive quantities where we think we can make a good alternative. And we worked a little bit on some life cycle analysis on various products we thought we could make. And we just saw that tissues and cotton pads or cotton rounds are major contributors to both waste and CO2 emissions. So we started there, right? Just figuring out how do we expand our portfolio in that space. And we actually did Kickstarters on that as well, right? To validate the idea and to help finance the product development. And then over time, we also learned that, in order for this business to have major impact, but also in order to build a healthy business, one or two things need to happen. So either those reusable products needed to go mainstream and become sort of, this is something everybody starts doing, or we would need to expand into other product categories that had a more refillable or repurchable dimension to it, right? And we didn't really see the cotton swabs, the facial rounds and so on. It didn't really go full on mainstream. Like, we've sold millions of these products. So there's a lot of customers out there, but it's still just not really big enough to build a sustainable business around it. And it's not big enough for the type of impact we want to have in our business. So that is the bridge into why do we have body wash and facial cleansers and hand wash and so on now? Well, it's another big issue that essentially we are all using products that contain 80-90% water, which most liquid soaps do, that are shipped around the world. And they also usually come in a single-use plastic bottle of some sort that you then throw out after you're done using your soap. So the whole concept about working with powders where you can mix it with water from your own tap is just a really, really good way to reduce waste and to reduce transportation and have a sort of a more clean cabinet in your kitchen at home where if you want to stock up on products, right, they take up much less space. And so that became our way into that space. Plus, most of our products need to be used in combination with a facial wash, or many people also ask, how do I wash the products? Well, you can wash it with hand soap, or you can wash it with some of our detergents. And so it just all fits nicely together, especially for customers who are into making a difference in the actions that they do every day.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And like, so I'm curious too, when you kind of started, even with the initial product, what was your kind of general go-to-market strategy as far as like, how were you looking to sell this stuff? Were you looking to do like selling direct around Europe? Were you looking to work with wholesalers? And I guess if that's changed up to this point in 2024 as well, can you just give me kind of a breakdown of those two different channels and how you're utilizing either one? Or
we actually always thought about this business as it had to evolve into an omni-channel business, just to get the scale and to get help really from multiple channels in building the brand and making the products available where customers shop. While we did start on Kickstarter, then we built our own e-commerce and Amazon, and that kind of spearheaded the first year of the business. But we started getting really a lot of attention from distributors and retailers as well. We quite early on, we started working with retailers through distributors, and then we layered on our own direct to retail channel as well, which if we look at the business today, it's a much more balanced business between basically e-commerce, our own website, that is Amazon, distributors, and then direct to retail. So that's been a part of the planning from the beginning. But of course, it's very much easier to start with the Kickstarter and e-commerce, because once you go into retail, packaging and a lot of other things, just getting the supply chain ready to handle that is a complete nightmare. We waited a little bit going full scale there, but we're there now. Yeah.
Then it definitely helps, obviously, to start online and have a kind of a proof of concept to be able to go to those distributors and wholesalers that you might work with to kind of have just like a leg to stand on in those conversations, rather than you just basically go to them and all you have is an idea and like a prototype. You're probably not going to get that good of a deal out of that situation. So it's really interesting how it can kind of go both ways. Like, I do a lot of CPG brands that come on the podcast, and I can find that like either way is fine to start, but it seems like, the one always is obviously fueling the other. Whereas like if you're in 1,000 doors of retail locations, people are going to look for you online so they can buy direct. Or if you start online, people are going to want to know where they can buy it at their local grocery store next time they're shopping if they can. So I think the omni-channel approach seems to be, like you mentioned, I think kind of the key to success and longevity in CPG here in 2024. It's a piece of advice that I get from a lot of people that I speak to on the podcast and just in general. So I think it's a really healthy perspective on that. And I appreciate you sharing that for anybody listening who might be, interested in getting into CPG or already is, or maybe is early on in their journey. I think it's a really good perspective. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I want to ask too, so obviously, working with more kind of sustainable packaging, sustainable processes to even create your products. Did you have any difficulty, finding manufacturers to work with and having like real partners that you knew, or one, doing the right thing, but also so that it could still be cost effective and you can still have obviously, longevity in your business?
It's a very good question, Matt. And I think, we've had tons of difficulties finding the right partners, right? We have worked with partners all over the world, and we have partners in Denmark that we stopped working with because we couldn't make it work. And we have partners in China that are doing an excellent job, and we have partners in Germany that are doing a great job. And it is a bit of a trial and error, to be honest, figuring out if they can actually deliver the quality that you want in the materials that you want to work with. That's been a challenge. There's another challenge, which is also just taking a step back, figuring out what is the most sustainable option to apply. And so we've spent quite a lot of time on thinking about our design principles and working with the life cycle analysis to really try and come to some conclusions about what is more important. Is it more important that it's a product that is durable, so it'll last a long time? Or is it more important that the material is more sustainable? If you sort of think about it, in the trade-off we usually look at is something like, is plastic better or worse than glass? Or is it better or worse than bamboo? And I'll give you an example. For our swabs, the rod of our swabs is made in plastic. And the reason we chose that is, rather than bamboo or wood, for instance, is the durability of the product. Because what we learned is the number one determinator for how sustainable the product is, how long will it last? And when you use and wash, you need to have something that will last you a long time, and where the tips of the swabs, which for us are made in a type of silicone, they need to be able to adhere very strongly to the other material. And that's difficult when you start working with more natural materials. But I could give you like 10,000 different examples of trade-offs where it will feel at face value less sustainable, but when you run the numbers, it's more sustainable. And that's an eternal discussion internally with us, like figuring out what is the right material choice and what implications will that then have on your manufacturing process, and who you need to work with, and how you communicate the value to the customer.
That's a really actually fascinating point that I've not really considered before, which is basically like, even if you are using a more sustainable material than a plastic from something that is single use, is it more or less sustainable to do something that you're going to consume 500 times in a year with bamboo, or something that you're going to use once for maybe the rest of your life, barring you basically losing it or like leaving it somewhere? So it's really, really interesting, because obviously you think about sustainability, plastic is like the last thing on your mind. But then when you think about it from that perspective, it actually makes a lot of sense, because something doesn't last. You could have somebody going through, 25, maybe something either wood or bamboo in a year. Is that more sustainable than just one piece of plastic that's this big for like a swab, for instance? So it's really fascinating. It's a really interesting perspective. Yeah.
And there's another example is when we talk about our bottles for our soaps and so on, right? So we looked at aluminium, we looked at glass, we looked at plastic, we looked at all sorts of different things. And there's sort of the life cycle analysis on glass, for instance, it's much worse than it is for a plastic bottle, right? Because of it's so heavy. Plus you have some considerations in terms of what happens if you drop that bottle in your bath, right? A body wash and glass is not a great combination. So we eventually ended up in plastic. And then we wanted to get a really high quality bottle of a thicker plastic bottle, right? So that it's storable and will last. So that's super difficult to come by, because right now what is happening is, and I think that's a good thing, right? You're imposing some plastic taxes on companies, how much plastic they use. So all other brands are going into the direction of, I want a lighter bottle, I want a thinner plastic, I want to use less plastic for each, because it's a single-use product. We wanted to use a little bit more so that it will last for years. And that was another really difficult thing, to find the supplier that has the right bottle in the right shape, in the right quality, in the right graded security, sort of, so that the plastic is safe to use with these types of products. So that many of these type of very sort of practical things that you need to solve on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I really appreciate your perspective on that, because obviously there's so many people that I talk to in the CPG space, whether it's food and drink or whatever the case might be. Sustainability is obviously at the forefront of a lot of young entrepreneurs' minds, and in the forefront of a lot of young consumers' minds. They actively seek these things out that are kind of more sustainable, less impact on the planet products that they can use in their daily lives. So I think somebody, maybe from the outside looking in, looking to start a sustainable brand in any way, is probably like me from the outside looking in, saying like, okay, so we're going to do absolutely no plastic. We're going to do no, like all these things, just kind of like the no-nos in your head. But in reality, it's probably pragmatically more effective to do it the way that you're talking about. So it's really fascinating. I really appreciate you sharing that. Kristian, I just want to ask as well, I know I mentioned this right off the air, but I am curious to hear your answer to this question. So you've got start 2018 was kind of the idea phase, 2019, your initial kind of launch. And so everything you've learned up to that point, if you can go back to that time and, start this business all over again, if there was any piece of advice you would give yourself, what do you think that would be?
Oh, there are many. I mean, I think you make so many mistakes during the early years of your business. And I think we still make mistakes because we're trying new things out, right? We're building new category. I think one of the things that I would have liked to do earlier, or given myself advice, is really to look more in depth on our metrics in terms of the repeat purchase rates. Like, what does it require really to build a business where you can apply paid marketing as a driver? Because I think we would have learned this. We were really good and we had some amazing years in the beginning. For many different reasons, that became more difficult. Paid marketing became really difficult in 2022. And having stronger metrics would have just helped us overcome that challenge better. So I think I would have used that knowledge to accelerate some of the other products that we have now launched earlier on to build a stronger business model. Because we have something that, when we're kidding ourselves sometimes internally, we're saying we're good for the planet, but we're bad for business because we've decided to make products that people shouldn't buy again, right? And and I think having come to the realization of the need to have replenishable products earlier on, that still delivers on our mission, which is reducing wasteful habits, stopping single using, that would have been nice. But it's easier to be clever in hindsight, right? So that's one piece of advice.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough, and it is good advice, and I think it really kind of illuminates the fact that so much of the world's economy, especially with things that you use for beauty or these types of products you're involved in, or just your everyday home life, are really predicated on that they're single use and driving that recurring business. That's how a lot of businesses make money. So alternatives to that, you definitely have to get a little savvy and scrappy. And I think that you definitely are. And those are kind of like the added challenges and pivots that you need to make when you're trying to do things the right way and be a forefront in this kind of new age of sustainable products and businesses. So appreciate you sharing that. Again, like I said, I think obviously, any young entrepreneurs coming up right now, it's definitely at the forefront of what they're doing. It's something that really resonates with, anybody in the kind of the Gen Z millennial category. So no, it's really interesting. Your perspectives are really valuable. And Kristian, I just want to give you an opportunity before we get off here, just to shout out your website, your social medias, anywhere anybody can keep in touch with the brand if they're interested in maybe a potential business partnership with you, or just want to try out the products or check it out. What's the best way to stay in touch with you all?
Yeah, so I think that there are two main places, right? So it's our website, lastobject.com, and then it's our Instagram, which is also just at LastObject. So both of those places, you can reach out, you can get in contact. We've done a lot of fun collaborations throughout the year. So we're always happy to meet other exciting brands who share our values. So yeah, those are the two places.
Awesome. Well, Kristian, I just want to say thank you again for coming on, and I just want to wish you the best of luck and continued success. I love what you're doing. It's really important, and appreciate you sharing your insights. And really looking forward to staying in touch as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Good speaking to you.
You as well. Thank you, Kristian. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.